The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Running Fantasy. The brand new offer for new customers. Play just $5. Get $50 bonus funds. Use promo code SGPN. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently Saturday morning, early Saturday morning, around 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Here on September 6th, I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again, going solo for this pod. Time to get into the breakdown of the women's final in the U.S. Open between Anisimova and Sabalenka. So we're going to break down that matchup in a second. Before we get into that, though, some housekeeping and reminder. You can also support the show by liking and subscribing on YouTube. And a reminder, you also leave a rating and review on Spotify or Apple. So the podcast available on video format, obviously, here on YouTube. We also simulcast on the SGPN Twitter account. Plus, you can also check out the podcast edited format, audio only, on Spotify or Apple. So no matter how you actually consume the podcast, please leave some feedback. Please help the show grow. And once again, like, subscribe on YouTube, and leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. Plus, a reminder, check out the actual merch store on the SGPN website. We have a lot of great merchandise there for the Tennis Gambling Podcast: shirts, sweatshirts, mugs, different colors, very affordable and also very comfortable. Check it out. Plus, we have a nice discount code right now for the start of football season because we have a quarter off everything in the merch store with the code football. Make sure to check out, once again, the Tennis Gambling Podcast merch, NBA Gambling Podcast merch, MLB Gambling Podcast merch, you name it. Point is, though, a bunch of shows on the network do have merchandise, so check it out. Once again, everything's discounted if you use the code football at checkout. Plus, a reminder, check out the Survivor contest. Even though week one did start, you still can enter, so make sure you enter before it's too late. But a reminder, $100 entry fee, winner take all. Sign up for the contest at sportsgambling.com/survivor to enter the Survivor contest. Anyway, starting off with the recap of the last episode for the men's semis. A reminder, we're going to briefly recap the lock and dog, then we'll recap the women's semis. We'll save the recap of the men's semifinal matchups in greater detail for the men's final episode that should be coming out on Saturday. Now, for the actual recap, once again, ended up splitting the plays. Did it the lock, though? We had Felix to record a break at minus 120. Never in doubt. I think he finished with 10 break points. Eventually did convert one of them, and he ended up getting the break in the second set. So not really much of a sweat there. Nice win for the lock. For the dog, had a loss. A bit annoying, as we had the under half a tie break there in the Djokovic match at plus 106. Alcaraz won in straight sets. Unfortunately, he was down a break early in the second set. He broke back. Then he had a love 30 late in the second set. Didn't convert, and you end up going to a breaker. So either way, picked up a loss there, but still won the lock with the Felix play, which I still think was a very sneaky play that most people weren't on, but it worked out for us. So overall split, look for another winning episode here on Saturday. Now, before we get into the actual preview of the women's final, I have to talk about how we got here for the semis. Now, we ended up seeing a couple of absolute epics. So Sabalenka ended up outlasting Pegula in 3. It was a war. Sabalenka was up a break in the first set, Then she fell apart. Anisimova came back and won. Pegula won the first set. The Sabalenka dominated the second set, went break immediately, opened up a massive lead, and she won 6-3 in the second set. And the final set was close. Pegula served well after getting broken in the first game of the third set. And Sabalenka fought off a bunch of break points, fought off 4 break points, survived, and got the job done. So not pretty, but either way, Sabalenka's back to another Grand Slam final. Will she finish the job off this time around? We'll see. Did lose in the Aussie Open final, lost in the French Open final. Coincidentally, the 2 separate Americans, she lost the, of course, Aussie Open to Madison Keys, lost the French Open final to Goff, and now she has Anisimova, who she lost to in Wimbledon in the semis, and potential shot of revenge here in the U.S. Open final. So it would be pretty funny if Sabalenka did lose to 3 separate Americans in the final of 3 different Grand Slams. But the point is, Sabalenka has been very close to winning every Grand Slam this year, and she has won none of them so far. So to kind of salvage the end of the year for her, it would be nice for her to get a title here and to get another U.S. Open title after winning last year, beating Pegula in the final in straight sets. Now, for the match in itself, once again, it was full of drama. It was close. Sabalenka did a great job not getting broken in the final 2 sets. Pretty even on the actual scoreboard, as you ended up seeing Sabalenka win 1% more on the first serve points, and she ended up facing the same amount of break point chances that Pegula had. But either way, point is she got the job done, served very well, served at around 67% for serve, which helped her win the match. But it was close. Could have gone either way, and Sabalenka eventually found a way to survive and to win in 3. Now, we thought that was going to be the match of the tournament, because that was a great match in general. Then you somehow topped that crazy match with another one, because Osaka and Anisimova had an absolute war that we ended up seeing in the second semifinal matchup, because Osaka won the first set in a tie break. Anisimova then went up a break early in the second set, got broken back immediately, then Anisimova broke again, then Osaka broke back immediately, then Anisimova broke again. The real theme here was that nobody could hold serve when they needed to, and it felt like the match was watching two players implode at different times, and it was a matter of who would keep their composure together for the longer period of time would win the matchup. But either way, you saw a bunch of breaks early. Anisimova had a chance to serve out the actual second set. She blew it. Then she had 15-40 in the 5-5 game for another chance to serve it out for the actual second set. She choked that too, but she found her composure, held serve, dominated the tiebreak, going up 4-0 immediately, and then eventually did win 7-3 in the breaker. Then she ended up going up a break in the third set. Osaka hurt her foot, couldn't really move that well, and either way, Osaka went down swinging, but you could tell she just didn't exactly have enough in the tank with the foot injury she was dealing with. But Osaka had chances, Anisimova had chances, somebody had to win, and eventually you ended up seeing Anisimova outlast Osaka in a very, very competitive and fun matchup. But either way, nice job by Anisimova, who had a couple of slip-ups in crunch time in the second set, dusted them off, and she was able to get the job done in 3. Good for her. Of course, for the episode we did for those two matches, we had the overs, and those cashed easily because both matches were epics, and we'll see if the Grand Slam final here does copy the same script that we saw in the semis. Now, besides that, though, talking about other housekeeping, once again, of course, we saw the men's semis. You have Alcaraz Sinner in the final. What else is new? Story of every single event. Besides that, you ended up seeing a women's double champion be crowned. Ended up seeing Tauson and Siniakova lose as the number 1 seed. Ended up losing to the number 3 seed with Dabrowski and Routliffe. Routliffe and Dabrowski actually beat them last year, and you ended up seeing them beat them again in straight sets. So nice job for the women's doubles team to get the job done. And once again, I'm sure you weren't expecting me to talk about this matchup, and I'm not really going to. But either way, nice job by the underdogs to get the job done here after beating them in the WTA finals last year. They beat them again. Nice job by, once again, Dabrowski and Routliffe, for some housekeeping purposes, winning the doubles title there for the U.S. Open. Now, once again, we should be getting a pretty entertaining final on paper between Anisimova and Sabalenka. We'll see if the matches hold a candle to the semifinal matchups, which were very intense, and hopefully we get some drama. But before we get into the actual breakdown of the final, a reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is MyBookDG. Check out the platform. You can bet on football, use the prop builder to help build, once again, whatever you want. Check out different sports they have. Their motto is bet on anything, anywhere, anytime, which kind of sums up the platform perfectly. Easy deposits and lightning fast payouts with crypto. A reminder, download you can actually just use the website, MyBookDG, promo code SGPN, and a reminder, use the promo code SGPN for 100% payback bonus up to $500 for new customers. MyBookDG, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Check out the models that you can build, or the house models they have for different sports. They have baseball, they have WNBA, they have golf, they have NFL. You name it, though, check out the college football and NFL stuff. And a reminder, they have a brand new leaderboard reward system. So if you end up using the leaderboard with weekly cash prizes, you can get rewards for just tracking your own bets on the app. Track 5 bets of the same type for any model. You build and you can win $1K. Once again, the bets don't actually have to win. Just track them and you have a chance to win $1,000. But a reminder, use the 7-day free trial with the promo link that we have with Rhythm. Go to sportsgamble.com/rhythm to get your 7-day free trial. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the recap of the semis. Time to move on into the final between Anisimova and Sabalenka. Now, for the matchup in itself, it will be taking place in the afternoon, taking place at around 4 p.m. Eastern. So, once again, should be going on the same time as college football. So, if you want to have multiple TVs set up, I don't hate that strategy. Now, Sabalenka's number 1, Anisimova's number 9 in the WTA rankings, but we know they have some history. Face off in Wimbledon in the semis, and Anisimova pulled off the upset. as she won in 3. Then Sabalenka got annoyed in the post-match press conference, and that resulted in a whole separate thing. But the point is Anisimova was able to beat Sabalenka in the last meeting in a Grand Slam environment, and we saw Sabalenka beat Anisimova earlier in the year in the French Open. So a couple of meetings this season. However, the head-to-head's actually in favor of Anisimova, so we should see a pretty interesting matchup, because you might see Anisimova, who should not be intimidated. You could argue that it could not, no matter what happens, it cannot go worse than the Wimbledon final, because she won 0 games. So she has made it to a Grand Slam final before. We'll see if she can get the job done here. But I don't exactly expect intimidation to be a factor when she has beaten Sabalenka earlier this year in a pretty intimidating environment, which was the semis in Wimbledon. So I do think that Anisimova going in has definitely more than a puncher's chance of winning. For the odds, I feel you'd argue that they might feel a bit steep, at least on paper. Sabalenka is around minus 200. I see Anisimova at around plus 175. For the over-under, I see 21.5 games, give or take, minus 130 on the over. The under's even money. And I see for the spread, minus 3.5 for Sabalenka, plus 3.5 for Anisimova. Bit of juice there, though, on the plus 3.5. For the set spread, you have Sabalenka in straight sets at plus 130. Anisimova to win ace sets at minus 165. The over 2.5 sets is around plus 136. And for the path so far, Sabalenka has only dropped 1 set. That was the first set against Pegula, where she was up a break in that set and then choked it. But that was the only set she dropped in the entire event. Now, she was playing 1 fewer match than Anisimova because of the walkover with Vondrousova in the quarters, but still not her fault. Has been looking pretty sharp. Now, Anisimova has been great as well. She's dropped 2 sets, one to Osaka, which was understandable. Osaka was in great form. Dropped a set earlier in the event to Christian. But besides that, she's been very good. Beat Swiatek, avenging the double bagel Wimbledon loss in the final. So it feels like she's at, I'd say, a very high level in terms of performance and in terms of confidence. And she could have unraveled against Osaka. She might have smashed her head a couple times with the racket, but she was able to settle in, get the job done, and win in 3. Now, for the pricing, I think 2-1 feels disrespectful to Anisimova. I do think you're looking at what should be a close matchup, and I do think that you could argue that Sabalenka should be favored based on resume, but do I think that she should be minus 200? No. I would probably have Sabalenka minus 150 if I had to price it myself. I think Anisimova is really solid. She is 6-3 lifetime against Sabalenka. So the head-to-head's been pretty favorable once again in favor of Anisimova. And once again, intimidation shouldn't be a factor for her in this matchup. So if you made an argument for Anisimova to win, I wouldn't really interrupt you. I think that Anisimova can pull this off. I'm not saying I'm picking her to pull it off, but I do think that she definitely has the game to get the job done. Both players stylistically are very, very similar. A lot of firepower, a lot of winners, and a ton of unforced errors. So you might see whichever player's in, I'd say, more consistent form winning by default, because the other person might just keep the ball out of play the entire time. But for the actual matches, dive into greater detail for those unforced error counts. So, for the matchup between Sabalenka and Pegula, Sabalenka actually was pretty good. She had a couple of issues, but she had 27 unforced errors with 43 winners. A very good ratio, especially for Sabalenka. We know against Goff in the French Open final, that was not the case, that's why she lost. So Sabalenka does have troubles keeping control of her, once again, forehand and backhand. She could easily punt the match by herself just by keeping the ball out of play and forfeiting, basically, a bunch of free points. Now, for the other matchup, with Osaka and Anisimova, Anisimova, by comparison, had 45 unforced errors with 50 winners. So once again, expect a ton of errors between the two of them, and we'll see which player is more consistent and a bit more dialed in win this matchup. Do I see a lot, at least based on right now the form of both players? The truth is no. I really don't. I think both players look pretty similar right now, and I do think you could argue, even though Pegula is the more highly ranked player than Osaka, was the Osaka win more impressive? Pegula played nobody in the event. Osaka was in great form. I think a lot of people were picking her to potentially pull off a run to the final. And we saw Anisimova survive adversity, get the job done there. You could argue that even though Sabalenka beat the higher-ranked opponent, the Osaka win might be a bit more impressive. That's kind of semantics, though. It doesn't really matter. Point is, each player looked good. It was an epic. They survived. And I think surviving is the key word I'll use. It wasn't pretty for Sabalenka or for Anisimova in the semis. They got the job done regardless of opponent, and now we're here. So I do think the matchup in itself, I am going to pick Sabalenka to win. Do I feel great about it? Not at all. I feel better about the over in this one. I'm going to go with the same script that I had for the semifinal matchups. Give me an epic. I think both players looked very sharp. The firepower is there. The potential mistakes are there. And the breaks of serve can definitely be there. I see a very, very close match. I think you're looking at a spot where you're looking at an opportunity for each player to maybe put an actual amount of pressure, a decent amount of pressure on their opponent, and maybe we'll see if the other person ends up cracking. Caleb's mentioning Pegula played well. She did. She served very well. I thought Osaka played well too. The point is, I thought both semis were very high level, regardless of opponent. So I'm not going to do the micro, I'd say, evaluation of, well, this person's better than this person. I think both players are really good, and both matches I felt like were pretty even in terms of stake and in terms of intensity. So I look at the comment section right now. I think people agree. I think people are looking at this matchup being very, very close on paper. You could argue, as Mike's pointing out, that maybe there's some pressure on Anisimova. Being the American at home, we'll see if she's able to handle it better, of course, with the home crowd behind her. I do think that she'll handle it better. To be fair, she can't handle it any worse because she won 0 games in Wimbledon. But I do think beating Swiatek, getting the immediate revenge, might be the boost she needs to maybe find a way to finish off the run. Sabalenka has been gifting Grand Slam titles to Americans over the last few years, especially this year with Keys winning her first title in the Grand Slam level, and of course Goff winning her second one, both times beating Sabalenka in the past. So I do think Sabalenka, despite being number 1 in the world, I definitely think that she can fall apart. I've mentioned many times before, I think Sabalenka is an underrated choker. Doesn't get talked about enough because she has 3 Grand Slams, but she's 3-3. And she has found a couple of embarrassing ways to get eliminated in matches she probably should win. If Anisimova keeps this close, there is a chance Sabalenka unravels. We've seen it before. We'll see if it happens again. Sabalenka, though, you could argue is going to be comfortable because she's been here before. She won the title last year, and maybe that's enough to get the job done. For me, though, I think the side's pretty close. For value alone, I got to go Anisimova. I don't see any value on Sabalenka at minus 200. I said 150 is the price I'd go with. So based on that, I think there is some value on the dog here. I don't mind the plus 3.5 games. If it's close, you end up winning most likely, and I think that's good enough. So I don't mind Anisimova for the value on the money line or for the actual spread for the games. Am I picking her to win? I'm not against it. For the price, I kind of have to. I think Sabalenka wins personally, but I don't see value on that. So I'll pass on the Sabalenka side here. Give me Anisimova for value on the money line and for the side. But my favorite play, once again, is the over. I'm going to run it back. Both players look pretty much the same. The firepower is there. The mistakes are there. I don't see many long rallies. I think both players are going to try to hit the ball as hard as they can, try to overpower their opponents, and hopefully keep the ball in play. So I'm going to go with, once again, the over as a main thought here. I think 21.5 games is too short. You're looking at what could be a straight set win by either player that still goes over. If there's a breaker in there, we saw a breaker in the matchup against Osaka. We saw, or 2 breakers, in the matchup against Osaka in the semis. We saw a marathon set there against Pegula in the first set of that matchup for Sabalenka. I think, once again, the over is the safer play. So I'll take that. I think value's on the dog here. I see Caleb pointing out kind of what I agree with, that Sabalenka is on pace for an all-time great trajectory without the brutal losses. And I agree. I feel like even though Keys was playing great tennis, if you want to make a comparison here, Anisimova kind of borrowed the entire script from Keys, which is, I'm going to hit the ball as hard as I can and try to stop me. And we saw Keys unravel, especially in the U.S. Open, against Zarazua. But the point is, in the Aussie Open, it worked. She was able to overpower Swiatek. She was able to overpower Sabalenka. And that path might be replicated by Anisimova here. So once again, keep that in mind. Anisimova might actually copy the exact same game plan as Keys tried to take away timing from Sabalenka, get into basically an absolute just firepower battle and try to win. So that could be the angle that she goes with. Either way, though, I see it being close. Give me the over. I'll go with Sabalenka, who I think is going to win in 3 as my prediction. There's no value on that, though. So give me for the value Anisimova plus the games for that one. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the preview of the final. Time to move on into the actual Lock and Dog picks. Before we get into the Lock and Dog reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Army Fantasy. Check out the pick'em entries, which you can create on your own for a chance to win 500 times your money. Different sports. Use baseball, basketball. You can use tennis. They have breaks of serve. They have double faults. They have, once again, total game higher. They have total game lowers. Check out everything they have. A lot of options there for tennis on for your underdog entries. And a reminder, also use the new offer for once again underdog, because you can play just $5, $50 bonus funds. Use promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Novig, which is America's #1 sports prediction market. Since Novig's an exchange, you'll get some of the best prices in the market. Novig's also available in 35 states. Download the app, get $50 when you spend just $5 if you use the promo code SGPN. So once again on the action, use the promo code with Novig, SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the preview of the women's final in the U.S. Open between Anisimova and Sabalenka. Time to move on into the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I'm going to go back to the bread and butter, a play that we had last time out, and I'm going to go back to it again. Give me Sabalenka, team total over 12.5 games here at -105. Caesars keeps hanging 105. I'll keep taking it. Sabalenka's got over this number in 4 of the last 5 matches. She went over against Pegula. Couple ways to get there. She can win in straight sets with a close set, lose in a marathon, or win in a marathon. Point is, though, it's been working out well for us. I'll go back to it. Sabalenka always finds herself in a 7-5 or 7-6, apparently, and I do think it's a good way to get a good price for Sabalenka. If Anisimova unravels in the second set, at least there's one close set you win anyway. But I feel like it kind of covers her bases, unless Sabalenka loses in straight sets, which I'm not going to pick for this one. I think there's a lot of paths to get there, and I like the price. But she's gone over in 4 of the last 5. She has gone over this each of the last 2 head-to-head meetings, including the loss in Wimbledon. She ended up going over this anyway. So once again, she can lose a close match and still go over. But Sabalenka has had a history of competitive Grand Slam finals. The 7th career Grand Slam final with Sabalenka, she has gone over this number in 4 of her first 6. So with that being the case, I do think that Sabalenka seems to find herself in a couple of very dicey moments, historically speaking, in Grand Slam finals. See that happening here again, but give me the Sabalenka team total over. It worked the last women's episode. I'll go back to it again, -105 for the lock. For the dog, give me an alt total. Same idea that we had for the Osaka match against Anisimova. Give me the over 22.5 at +110. If you want 21.5, it's at -130. Don't hate it, but I do like the 40-cent differential by adding a game. Can get there in straight sets with a 7-6, 6-4, or once again, something higher than that. But you're looking at a pretty similar game plan for both players. Hit the ball hard, hope for the best. That's kind of the game plan. So I see a pretty competitive battle like we saw in Wimbledon. I think you're looking at a pretty solid amount of errors, which can result in a lot of momentum swings over the course of this matchup. And also worth mentioning, 4 of the last 7 head-to-head meetings did not end in straight sets. The last meeting in Wimbledon went 3. I think this one might go 3 as well. But I do think you're looking at a close matchup either way. So I'm basically doubling down on the over. But I'm going to go with Sabalenka, team total, and I'm going to go with the alt over as the dog play for the show. So once again, the lock and dog for the women's final. Lock's going to be on Sabalenka, team total over. 12.5 once again at -105 on Caesars. For the dog, I'm going to go with Anisimova and Sabalenka over in the full match, 22.5 at +110 at BetRivers. It's going to wrap it up for the show. Back once again for the men's final between Sinner and Alcaraz on Saturday. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.